mystery, so welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm finally going to be doing my best books of 2018, and as you can probably tell by my voice, unfortunately I'm still kind of sick. If you've been watching my reading vlogs you might know I started feeling better like a couple days ago, but today I woke up and I had another kind of relapse, I guess, on my sore throat, so that's fun. But anyway, I need to film these videos, so yeah, I'm sorry if I sound weird, we're just gonna have to deal with it. But as you might know, if you've been watching my channel recently, I've been doing these yearly wrap-up videos, and I've already done a couple in that series, and I will link the full playlist up in the cards and down below if you want to check it out. But today, as I said, it's time to talk about my best books, and I'm really excited about this video because as much as I enjoy doing rant videos and kind of being negative a little bit, I also really like sharing about the books that I do love. And I feel like sometimes it can come across like I don't like that many books, but I actually do. And yeah, this video is time to showcase those, I guess. It just kind of played out that I have actually 10 favorite books and then about 3 honorable mentions, so yeah, I can do a top 10 list, I guess. That's pretty cool. I didn't organize this in any specific way, like it's not from worst to best, because I've worst of my best to the best of the best, because I feel like that's kind of impossible to do, at least for me. I can't honestly say which of these I love the most, so we're just gonna talk about them as a collective. These are all books I really enjoyed for various reasons. These are all books that I wholeheartedly recommend you to read, basically. So let's just jump into it. Of course, we need to start on my honorable mentions, and the first of those is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. This is a high fantasy book that is focused around just nunnery, where they're training nuns to be assassins pretty much, and it is so good. To be honest, this is not a perfect book, and I had a few issues with this, particularly with the world building, because I felt like there were some things that weren't explained enough, but overall the story is just so gripping. The characters, they're all basically fighting nuns, and it's pretty awesome to read about what they get up to, and it definitely made me really interested to see how the series continues. And the third book, I think, and the final book in the series is coming out next year, so I'm really excited about that. And yeah, if you haven't checked out Red Sister yet, I highly recommend it. If it sounds like something up your alley, do give it a try. My next honorable mention is A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. This is obviously a very popular and famous book. It's set in Afghanistan, and it follows 2 women that go through life, and we follow the first as she grows up from a child and is forced to marry a guy she doesn't want to marry, and then eventually sort of takes on this younger, or her husband takes on this younger woman as a second wife, and she's kind of the age to be her daughter, actually. So it kind of just follows their 2 lives and how they intertwine and all the hardships they have to endure. I find it was very enlightening on sort of the history of Afghanistan, because honestly I have no idea about that country, like most of the countries in that area, and I thought it was really interesting in that aspect. It was heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time, and I just loved everything about this. And finally, my last honorable mention is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This is obviously a classic horror ghost story that was written in the 50s, and it follows a woman that is asked to kind of investigate a haunted house because she has apparently had some paranormal experiences in her past. And as she goes to this house with other people that have had similar experiences, she just sort of gets to know the house, and spooky things happen. And I just love the entire atmosphere of this book. I thought it was written really well. I love the characters. I kind of just enjoyed everything about this. It wasn't overtly scary, but I just, the atmosphere was really haunting, as I like to say. So I definitely recommend this one if you haven't checked it out yet. And with those honorable mentions out of the way, let's get into my top 10 of 2018. The first book is kind of like a recurrence, I don't know how you say that, but basically I already mentioned this book in another video, and that was my most surprising reads, but I also think it was one of my favorite books of the year because I just loved everything about it. And that's Red Rising by Pierce Brown. As I said, I didn't have high expectations of this book necessarily, but they were just like, you know, met and beyond that pretty much. The book kind of follows a very basic setup of just, you know, a guy from like the lower classes pretty much pretending to be from the higher classes in this world, and then, you know, kind of proving that you know, the system of like dividing people is sort of arbitrary, and overthrowing the society of this like sci-fi world. And while I do think that this book has been done before, this was one of the better versions, and I really loved it. I instantly fell in love with the characters, the main characters, the side characters. I love the setup. I love that this book is sort of a little bit like Hunger Games, but it felt a lot more fast-paced, I guess, in a lot of ways than Hunger Games did, and it definitely, you know, it developed in a better way, I think, over the course of this entire trilogy. I think that the sequels are very much their own thing, and they didn't just, like, as with the Hunger Games trilogy, for example, like, they didn't just repeat the same scenario of, like, people being sent to the Hunger Games 3 times and more. And instead of that, it's sort of, it just like, it develops and builds upon that and like takes off into a completely different direction. So I really love that about this book. I really enjoyed it, and I think if you're on the fence of picking this up, definitely give it a shot, because it might just surprise you as much as it did me. Next we have a non-fiction book, and that is In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. This is obviously about this young woman's escape from North Korea through China and her experiences with like human trafficking and, you know, I don't even know, like so many horrible things that she had to endure at a really young age, just to, you know, fight for her most basic human rights. And I think it is extremely eye-opening, especially if you know nothing or very little about North Korea. On quite a different note, I also really enjoyed The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss this year. This is a high epic fantasy about a man called Quoth, and like basically just like what he experiences in his life. I understand this book is probably not for everyone because it's very detailed, I guess, in a lot of ways on his life. I do know that some people think that this book is a little bit misogynistic, and I'm not, you know, I don't have any like you know, rebuttal to that. I'm just saying that I didn't notice, and I don't, it did, nothing stood out to me where I was like, oh, this is kind of icky, and I know that some people have other experiences with that, and that's totally fine. For me, I just really enjoyed this book, and I love these types of fantasies that are so focused on one character, spending a lot of time developing that character. And in particular, I love this trope of like a random guy from like the lower classes or whatever that has nothing going for him, and he just develops like magical powers that like outstrip everybody who's like from higher born or whatever, and he just like is just so good at school and like at magic for no apparent reason. I know it's maybe, again, not everybody thing, but for me, I just love that so much. And there's several scenes at university with him where just like where I was correcting his teachers or like teaching his teachers, and it's just so satisfying to read. Again, maybe just me, I just like wanted to give you like a full picture of this. I just really love this book. I really liked the world building, I like the character development, and I think, you know, that's why I read high fantasies, is to be sort of have this focus on like one character and kind of their life and like what they go through, as opposed to like, as I said, a trope I don't like is, for example, a group of random people that seem to have like no discernible personalities between them, or like that have split like one personality between like 8 people, and you know, what they get up to. Like I care much less about that than I do about like the one person that we get an in-depth look at. So this is kind of just like the perfect book for me in a lot of ways, I guess. We're jumping quite a bit in genres because the next is a contemporary, and that is The Crane's Dance by Meg Howry. This is a book about 2 sisters that are ballerinas, and as opposed to a lot of other ballet contemporaries I've read where the main characters are still teens and like in ballet school and trying to make it, in this case we actually follow like 2 30-year-old women or so that have both already made it, and one of the sisters has unfortunately had like a mental health breakdown pretty much and had to step down from ballet, and the other is kind of blaming herself and kind of living with that guilt of her kind of continuing on with her career while her sister is sort of suffering and like sort of feeling like she didn't do enough to help her. And I thought that this book was first of all written beautifully. Just like read the first chapter if you come across this in like a bookstore or whatever, and I just like really liked the writing style of this. It seemed to make fun of itself a little bit, of like the ballet world. It talked about a lot of important issues. I thought that it talked about this relationship between sisters really beautifully and really you know, comprehensively, and I just overall really enjoyed this book. And honestly, Meg Howry has, by this book alone, just like completely taken my heart, I guess, and I really want to read more by her now, because I really am excited to see what else she comes out with now. Another non-fiction book that I really love this year that I'm sure isn't going to be, you know, everybody's cup of tea is Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. This is a book about Jon Krakauer's own ascent of Mount Everest alongside a group of people on a night in 1996 where a lot of people died, and you know, he kind of examines that catastrophe and what happened, and like tries not necessarily to find blame but more to find a reason, and kind of looks at the overarching you know, situation. He also gives a lot of backstory on Everest as a whole, kind of like people's you know, aspirations of climbing Mount Everest and sort of the history of climbing Mount Everest and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was so well put together and so interesting and just so suspenseful, because he doesn't go out and say like on page 1, oh, this is what happened, but he kind of leads you there, and he kind of examines all of the necessary aspects on the way before, like kind of depicting the actual night of this event. And I just, honestly, I was blown away by this book. I was freezing under my blanket reading this, just thinking about the freezing temperatures and you know, impossible conditions that these people had to live through. And as I've said before, I really like stories like this where it seems that people kind of go beyond what you would think a human capable of to survive, and it's just so fascinating, and I have nothing but admiration for anybody who attempts to climb Mount Everest. I also think they're kind of suicidal and a little bit stupid, and especially if they have a family, that's extremely irresponsible, but at the same time, I love reading about it, so, you know. Another fantasy that was a definite favorite of mine this year was Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. Again, I think this is a book on which the waters are sort of divided, because some people say that they really love the writing style and others say it's just the worst. So I kind of feel like, again, you should probably kind of read a sample or like just start leafing through the first chapter or so just to see if you enjoy it. I definitely really enjoyed it. Similar to Red Sister, this is just another book about assassin nuns, and I guess that's kind of my thing. But the books are very different, I think, in both their structure and story, and like literally the only thing they have in common is like assassin nuns. So yeah, if you've read either of these books, I think you might enjoy or will enjoy the other. Then we have The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is a retelling of the myth of Achilles and Patroclus, and it is so well done. I really enjoyed it. I loved how it brought the setting and the characters to life. It brought me to tears multiple times. Like, I finished this book crying my eyes out because it was so freaking sad. So Achilles and Patroclus in myth are, I don't know if this is like a contentious thing, but like some people say that they were lovers, and this book basically takes that premise and just runs with it. And it was just such a sweet love story, and I love the setting of like Greece and like just everything. Like, I read the myth as a child like probably multiple times, so I left like recognizing things that I already knew and like discovering new things that I didn't already know. So it was just so well written as well, and I don't even know, like, if you haven't checked this out, I highly recommend you do, because it's just so beautiful. And like, if this book does not make you cry, then I think you're probably made of stone. So I didn't notice this before, but I seem to have a lot of books on this list that I think might not be for everyone, because this next one probably isn't either, and that is The Idiot by Liv Batterman. This book follows a young like woman of Turkish descent as she like gets accepted into Harvard and basically spends her time there thinking that she's stupid or like an idiot, kind of in comparison to the others, but not necessarily on like an academic or intellectual level, but just like in terms of real life experience. She's never really had a boyfriend. She kind of strikes up this semi-relationship with, I think, a Hungarian guy who actually already has a girlfriend, and they write these super pretentious emails back and forth that don't really mean anything. Like, they just write words but there's no real, I think, no real meaning behind them. But anyway, I thought the book was very reminiscent of like daily vlogging, because it's literally just like her days and what she thinks, and there's like barely any plot to this book. She does eventually go to Hungary to teach English, but there's just so little plot that I think a lot of people will not enjoy this at all. For me, it was perfect though. It might have been because I read it at a good time, or just because I personally really enjoy vlogging and this like stream of consciousness type content that doesn't really go anywhere, like doesn't really have a point except for you to learn about somebody's life. And I love that. I really, really love that. So I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was well written. I thought it was laugh out loud funny at times, and it definitely took me aback with that funniness, which was also fantastic. Second to last, we have Killers of the Flower Moon by David Graham. This is another non-fiction book about the Osage murders and the birth of the FBI, and this was one of the most eye-opening books I've read in a very long time. So David Graham is a journalist, and in this book he explores the murder of the Osage Indians in the 1920s. There was a string of murder on their reservation, or reservations, I don't actually know, and nobody really knew why these people were getting killed or who was doing the killing. And eventually the like just newly formed FBI got involved and tried to do something, but because the victims were Native Americans, it wasn't really given the attention that it deserved, or like the focus that it deserved. And so kind of David Grant does just unravel what happened back then, and like give an account of what happened back then, both in the investigation and with the murders. And then he also adds like some information that came to light newly, like that he himself discovered. And I thought this book was one of the most suspenseful nonfiction books that I've ever read. It read like a mystery thriller almost. It was absolutely atrocious what these Native Americans had to suffer, and I think it's absolutely, you know, unconscionable that we don't know about this. Like, it happened not that long ago, like 90 years ago, or 100 years ago, almost. But that's not that long ago if you think about it, and I have never heard of this in my entire life before randomly picking up this book. It's also just so interesting and gripping, and I love this type of journalism that goes really in depth on a certain case, and then presents it to you as a full story. And I think it lends, you know, the fact that this happened in real life adds so much depth and gravity, and also the sense of like unfinished business or like loose ends, because in a lot of thrillers and mysteries the endings tend to be very like convenient, and obviously this is real life. There's no convenient endings, and there's, you know, unanswered questions everywhere. And I think, you know, it's just a wonderful book all around, very, very gripping. If you're a mystery fan, if you're a non-fiction fan, if you're, you know, a history fan, or if you just want to know about the atrocities committed against the Native Americans of this tribe, like 100% check out this book. One of the best books I've read this year and probably ever, and I just cannot recommend this book enough. And last but not least, certainly not least, a book that I have loved this year more than anything else. I think it's sort of on par with the Killers of the Flower Moon. It's different, so, you know, it's not that easy to compare. But this is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Yes, I know, I've said this like a million times. I've talked about this in like every video ever. It seems I mention this literally any chance I get, and it doesn't only seem that way, that is how it is, because I loved it. It's a kind of modern take on a classic mystery book. It follows this guy who relives the same day every day in a different body of a party guest, trying to solve the murder of the lady of the house that dies at the end of the night at that party. And it is extremely intricate, it's extremely complicated, and I know that some people don't enjoy that. There's a lot of thinking you need to do on your own part to I think, comprehend this whole thing. And if you really want to know what's going on at all times, you should probably take notes. I didn't take notes because I didn't really want to disrupt the flow for myself like that. I kind of had a vague idea of what I like, knowing what was going on, but overall I didn't really feel like I needed to sit down and like plot out the intricacies myself, because at the end of the day I think Stuart Turton did a really good job of bringing it all together, and I'm really excited and looking forward to my first reread of this, like reading it with the knowledge of the ending in mind, and kind of tracing things back and like noticing little clues and stuff like that. I'm so excited to do that, hopefully in 2019. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. If you're a mystery fan, read it. If you're an Agatha Christie fan, read it. It is truly phenomenal. Like, I can't, you know, not everybody can write a book like that. I think it's very revolutionary, but still, you know, includes very familiar and very old-fashioned almost elements, and I think that those two things came together really well in this book, and were just, it resulted in one of the best books, or actually the best book that I read in 2018 out of all like 107 or so. And that's saying something. So if by some, you know, fluke you haven't yet heard me say this, get this book, read this book, at least give it a try, because it is absolutely phenomenal, and I can't wait for other things that Stuart Turton comes out with. Like, this was his debut novel, guys. Debut novel, and just an absolute killer. And that is it for all of my favorite books of 2018. My voice is dying, it seems. I wanted to film so many more videos today. I don't think I'm gonna do that necessarily, but I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found some inspiration for new books to get. If you still have like book vouchers for Christmas or whatever, get one of these books, all of these books, or get them from the library, whatever. Just like get your hands on these and read them, because I think you won't regret it. Similarly, please let me know in the comments down below what was your favorite book of 2018 that you think I should 100% check out. Leave it in the comments down below, and don't forget to like this video, and please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. I will see you very soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!